When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, you know your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
Hello, and welcome to Hear Her Sports, the Female Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Emery, and I am so happy to be here. I am happy to be talking once again to someone from the Cyclists Alliance, or TCA, one of my absolute favorite women's sports organizations. TCA is an independent union for professional female cyclists. They provide holistic support for riders and campaign for change, from minimum salaries to equal media coverage. And here with me today is the new president of the board, Grace Brown. Grace is Australia's most successful female road cyclist. She recently retired from the sport as Olympic and world champion in the individual time trial. Grace's rise to the top of professional cycling began in 2019 when she signed with Mitchelton Scott, winning the National Time Trial Championship and a stage in the Santos Tour Down Under in her first season. At the Tokyo 2021 Olympics, she finished fourth in the individual time trial, just shy of the medals. In 2022, she moved to the FDJ Suez team, where she continued to build an impressive palmarès. She won Commonwealth Games gold, earned 2 silver medals at the World Championships individual time trial, and dominated the National Individual Time Trial Championships for multiple years. In 2024, she reached the pinnacle of her career, winning Olympic gold in Paris, becoming world champion in the individual time trial, and claiming victory in the prestigious Liège-Bastogne-Liège. In addition to her work with TCA, Grace is now part of the SBS commentary and podcast team. I invited Grace on the show to discuss the 2025 TCA Annual Rider Survey, and really, I had intended to talk only about that. But once Grace was on the phone, I just couldn't help myself, and we ended up talking about much more. Because Grace just retired from the sport and her position at TCA, Grace has interesting insight and knowledge of rider contracts, rider agents, quality of media coverage of women's cycling, details about travel around race days, some secret behind-the-scenes discussions on possible new models of the sport, and how the sport suffers from being stuck in tradition. So here she is, Olympic and World Time Trial Champion and President of the Cyclists Alliance Board, Grace Brown. Well, hello, Grace. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you starting us off after our break, the Hear Her Sports annual summer break. So thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Elizabeth. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. And mostly we're here to talk about the newly released TCA Annual Riders Survey results. But before we get into that, how has retirement been for you so far? And I should be more specific that you retired from professional racing. You have not retired at all. You are still very much involved in cycling.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to fully retire in life at the age of 33. But yes, about this time last year, I had my very last professional race as a cyclist, and since then have been doing other things in life, which has been fun, sometimes challenging, and it's I mean, like any big change in life, it's never completely easy, but it's the challenge is always worthwhile.
Well, let's get to the survey. This is the 8th year the Cyclists Alliance has produced the annual rider survey, so it's been interesting to follow along that development of the sport and the changing issues through those 8 years.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting to capture this data over the time that the Cyclists Alliance has been around. We've seen huge progress in the sport, which has been really positive, but there's still like issues that have continued as a pattern basically through, and some new ones, I guess, that have emerged as well, just due to the growth, especially at the top level. So yeah, it's really, I think, special that the Cyclists Alliance started collecting this data so early. And yeah, we've seen like the economic position of women's sport in general rise a lot across so many different sports, and we've been able to capture that specifically in women's cycling.
It's so interesting that you mentioned progress because, yes, we could, we've definitely seen progress, but it seems to me that it's not just progress. There's also a shift so that the issues have been changing. And it's sort of weird to follow that change and to sort of think about, where the work now needs to be done given that shift.
Yeah, exactly. So we've seen really a lot of the growth happen at the top level of the sport. So for cycling, it's the World Tour level, and there is where a lot of the sponsorship money comes in. It's where the regulations are the most tight and monitored. So then, we're seeing like the top level, like the best cyclists in the world really benefit from economic growth in the sport, earning bigger salaries, having longer contracts, better professionalization within the teams that they're on compared to 10 years ago. But then at the same time, like the lower tiers of the sport are being left behind. So we have in cycling the continental level of racing, which has sort of in this process suffered a little bit. It used to be that women's cycling was sort of, the difference between the top and the bottom wasn't that big, but it's almost like the continental level hasn't progressed at all. And we're still seeing like issues that you just don't think should be around in the year 2025, where, riders are, have financial insecurity still. They're being, in some cases bullied and manipulated, and sort of just their well-being on their teams is quite questionable. So yeah, it's like it's this sort of yin and yang almost. Like, yes, we celebrate progress at the top, but we can't sort of get taken away by that sort of dreamlike fantasy. We also need to step back and be like, okay, well, that isn't the reality for everyone in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I want to go through, I'd love for you to go through all the different things that you've learned in this year's survey, but I do want to go back to what you were talking about. You found that 17% of riders don't earn any salary, and 20% of riders earn less than 20 euros. 20,000.
Yeah.
Yes, 20,000 euros.
I would say 20 euros is equivalent to nothing.
Yes.
But 20,000 euros is still something, but really not. I think the problem is that a lot of these riders have been competing in races with riders that are like on the top salaries. So it's really hard to expect someone to perform when they're earning nothing or, less than 20,000 euros a year and have to work a second job. They're probably, most of them are studying as well, just not throwing all their eggs in the cycling basket compared to, Demi Vollering is currently the top paid rider in the World Tour and she's on near €1 million. So it's like, how can you have those two different realities in the same race and expect the same standard of sport across the board? Yeah, but it is a tricky one because minimum salaries have only come into the sport in like the last 5 years, and it's been really positive for, you know, a lot of the sport, but at the same time putting those minimums the whole way across. So they apply now to the World Tour and the Pro Team tier, which is sort of the middle tier, but not to the continental level of racing. So those teams aren't mandated to pay a salary unless you're in a certain country like Spain have introduced it. And the problem is that when you do put these regulations in place, a lot of the teams actually financially can't support it. So in Spain, where they've done this, there's now only one continental level team, whereas there used to be quite a lot. So it's a matter of like, how do you support that level to be able to pay a minimum salary? Because we still need that level of racing as a development pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any sense of how many riders would like to be on a team and have, ability to be pro cyclists who are not able to get the contracts that they want? Like, are there riders available to be in these positions if they were paid?
I think there's definitely plenty of riders that want to be in that position, but whether you have to work through the system, the levels, prove that you've got potential, like physically, and then get picked up by a bigger team that has the means. So that's why these lower level teams are valuable, because they give that opportunity for the riders to race and show that they can perform at that top level. You can't just go from being a recreational amateur rider to suddenly jumping into the World Tour. It's just like too big a difference, really. So there needs to be a stepping stone approach, but there's definitely more and more like female riders. Like the sport is expanding a lot. The depth has increased considerably over the last decade of the talent coming through now, which is super exciting. But yeah, we need to place them somewhere, and it's becoming harder to make the top teams. Like it used to be a little bit easier to skip the lower levels of racing and jump straight into the top tier if you show that you're a talent. But now it's like, well, it's pretty full up there, and there's a lot of depth. So yeah, I think you see that with a lot of sports as they mature, that it becomes harder to become professional.
Sure. What are you thinking about? Like, what are you imagining is the best situation for this continental level teams? Like, would you like to see more racing at that level that would be separate from the World Tour?
I think we'd like to see the UCI, which is the governing body, step in and take a little bit more responsibility for the continental level of racing. At the moment, they leave it really up to the federation. So basically, those teams are registered at a national level, and then races sort of happen in each jurisdiction, and the UCI don't have much influence over regulating, whether those teams follow the rules, or if there's an issue, they leave it up to the national bodies rather than getting involved unless it becomes really serious. And so it's a bit like the Wild West, and the standards are all over the place. I think the UCI need to recognise that it's actually an important level, and important for the whole, the whole system of cycling together, and the pathway for developing riders, and that perhaps there needs to be some financial structure that supports them rather than just leaves them to their own devices to struggle. And then yeah, so, some financial help, but then also like making sure that those teams are all operating in a professional manner. The staff on the teams are up to scratch. And yeah, so that the riders are being fairly looked after and treated well, given race opportunities, all of that. So yeah, it's quite a, I guess, complex problem.
I was going to say, it seems, at first it seems simple, but it's obviously not.
No.
And I have done exactly what I said I wasn't going to do, which is to talk about all sorts of stuff other than the survey. So let's get to the survey and tell me what you guys have found this year.
Yeah, so we've found, I guess overall, we've found that contracts in general are getting longer, especially at the World Tour level, but still, yeah, Conti level riders have a lot less security in terms of employment. We've seen the minimum or the salaries increase substantially at the top level, and again, the Conti level is being left behind. And then, sorry, we've got so much data, but I'm trying to pick out like the major points here really. But we're also seeing now that like a lot of the peloton don't need to work a second job, and also riders are like stopping doing as much study, which I don't necessarily think that that's a positive thing, but it sort of shows that there's more security in cycling as a job, and it's trending more towards how like male professional athletes are, in terms of like, okay, well, I can see that I am going to earn enough money here and I don't need to have this backup option if it fails. I still think that it's important for professional athletes to study, and because even if you have the I've experienced, even if you have the best career and earn good money in the time that you're there, it's still short, and you have a lot of life afterwards. So I think being educated is really important for your next phase of life. But at the same time, yeah, those continental level riders are still having to work mostly. Often do study as well, which is good. We've also seen, I think, which is positive, a rise in the number of riders that are working with agents and legal support to negotiate their contracts. This is a service that we offer as an association to help, riders that maybe can't personally afford it, to review their contracts and make sure that they're signing something that's fair and legal, because sometimes there's some sneaky clauses in these rider contracts.
What kind of sneaky clauses have you found?
I think often a lot like signing over different rights that, especially in terms of like image rights and stuff that really like the rider should be able to keep. And I'm trying to think of some other examples, but they're really often like very one-sided contracts that like you basically give everything to the team. You are obliged to tell the team everything that's going on in your life. You have to use the team doctor and not your own, which isn't really ethical, I don't think. So,
right. I bet it would be helpful to have somebody look at it. I mean, even you guys, because I mean, I can imagine getting a contract and thinking, oh, it's in the contract. This must be normal.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you don't necessarily have other contracts to compare it to.
Right,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. I don't personally look at these contracts. We have legal staff on the team that do.
I figured.
So yeah, it's that's why I don't have like great examples. I just hear some of it, but yeah, we have like a bit of a separation and confidentiality with that. So yeah, but it's still, I think a lot of athletes don't understand the importance of this. And also, you know, especially when they're new, they're so excited to get a professional contract that they just, you know, don't even blink and sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
And the same even with agent contracts. Like there's an assumption that an agent is doing things in your best interest, but they're there to make money. So yeah, I think those contracts also need to be reviewed by an independent party. But yeah, it's super interesting. I think so. The awareness now that you don't have to agree to everything is really positive, and we're seeing a lot of riders take a bit of a legal overview before they sign things, which is great progress.
I think that's great progress because it's sort of coming out of the, you know, like, I'm just grateful to have any opportunity and take whatever you get.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of like the rest of the survey, we did something new this year. We used to ask sort of a basic question about whether riders feel like safe in their working environment, and it was a bit of an obscure question because in cycling, safety, you know, physical harm like in racing is like a real thing, and it's quite different to like workplace safety, if you understand. Like so you might be like, well, of course I don't feel safe, I'm like riding in a peloton and, you know, crashes happen all the time. So we really wanted to break that question down a bit and understand whether, you know, riders felt like they were feeling like their well-being and their working conditions were safe and fair. So we got some interesting results from that. Positively, like 71% said that, you know, no, they hadn't experienced any violation to their safety in team environments, but we did get 14% said that they felt their well-being was neglected, and 12% noted unfair selection practices, and then 7% pressure to race against medical advice, also 7% abuse of authority. So these things still exist, which isn't great, and we hope that, you know, over time we can see those numbers lower.
Yeah. One of the questions that you asked and was in part of the survey were race days. Can you talk a little bit more about what you found and also the significance of what you found?
Yeah, so the race days was an interesting one. We found that over half the riders race between 30 and 50 days in a year. And then 37% have less than 30 race days in a year. It's very individual, like what a lot of racing is. The maximum that the UCI regulates for a single rider is 75 days. That would that would put an end to your career, I think. Yeah, which
or
is
close.
A lot. And but often like the women are compared to the men, and the fact that the men do like far more race days, but the men's calendar is also like much more blocked, and say if a male cyclist does a grand tour, that's 21 days in 3 weeks, compared to like the women, our longest tours are like 9 days. So the amount of like extra like travel and like team days and everything that goes per race day sort of makes it more tiring than if you were just to do like all your race days in like these blocks of tours. So quite often we see that, the fatigue per race day is maybe higher for women because there's like all this, for want of a better word, administrative fluff around around each day. And then, so for some, like I used to feel okay with around 50 race days a year. But other riders, like in 40 race days feels like a lot. So it's very individual, I would say. And then there's riders at the other end of the scale that just aren't getting raced enough. Like they don't get consistency, and they're like, there's a lot of uncertainty in their calendar. They're sort of on hold, which is sort of a hard mentality to perform under, because if you're just sort of waiting in the shadows to be called up to replace more favoured riders, then when you get to a race, it's hard to, perform at your best. So, it's as I said, very varied experience across the peloton.
That's super interesting. I don't know if I would have thought about all that, sort of the comparison to the men's side and thinking about the sort of the fatigue and also the stress, using in that big word, stress, of what a race day entails. And as you said, in women, it entails a lot of travel. And also, if you're traveling a lot, that means that you're not training. So there's, fewer training days in between, I would think, as well. That's sort of is part of that.
Yeah, especially you see it. So the start of the year is like the spring classics, all the one-day racing. And it's really full on because you'll be basically once or twice a week you'll race. So you'll travel and join the team maybe 2 days out. Then you've got 2 days with the team. You'll like go and look at the course. You'll do meetings, all this stuff to prepare. It's slightly fatiguing being in the team environment because it's, in a way, you're not at home. You're not as relaxed as you would be otherwise. You race, and then generally you would be on a flight after the race, get home absolutely exhausted around midnight or later. And then the whole next day is basically a write-off because you're cooked.
Right.
And then you have like an easy day, you have another hard day training, and then basically you're like traveling again to the next race. So it's just this sort of continuous roller coaster. You don't get to switch off much or like get into a rhythm, which takes its toll.
Yeah. Well, let's also talk about broadcast coverage, because that certainly has changed. I don't know, let's use the last 5 years. It's changed incredibly.
Yeah. So one thing we found in the survey is we asked riders because we're an advocacy organisation, we asked them what their advocacy priorities are for the next year or so, and pretty much always race safety comes out on top. But we did see that broadcast and race visibility was a high priority of a lot of our members. And yeah, basically I think because, the broadcast and the visibility of the sport is so linked to being able to, to its economic growth, really, because it's a sponsorship sort of funding model in cycling. Teams and race organisers and riders really rely on being on TV pretty much to bring money into the sport. So as long as there's a, discrepancy between the amount of racing that's being pushed out on the men's side compared to the women, we're always going to be behind. So we're looking, it's this area that's really hard to have any influence because, broadcasters are big players, and if they don't want to put money into something, they're not going to do it. Often it's the race organisers as well that are reluctant to sort of schedule as much of the race for broadcast. So it's a hard area to push in, but one that, we really feel can make a big difference. And also across the levels, at the moment, it's mandated that World Tour races have a minimum amount of broadcast, but the tiers below, if they don't even have any video coverage of their races, then it's not really an issue in terms of the rules. So I think it's important for the lower level as well to have visibility, to be more sustainable and get money in and can continue attracting sponsors.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, though. In the survey, it was mentioned about visibility and accessibility.
Yeah.
But one of the questions that I have based on watching women's cycling and men's cycling is often I'm disappointed with the quality of the coverage in women's sports, and whether that's, not enough, which we've talked about, but also just the commentators, their knowledge, who they're getting to do the commentating. And I'm not trying to call anybody out, but, I don't see the same high level in the women's coverage often as I do in the men's. And, on one hand, I can just say, oh, well, I got to put up with it. However, I think it often makes the sport look boring or amateurish. And that is what worries me. Somebody tunes in, they don't know women's cycling that much, and they say, oh, I'm never going to watch this because it's boring, it's not as good as the men. And they assume that it's because the racing isn't as good as the men's, when that is not the case. It has to do with the coverage. Yeah,
that's very true. And I think it's, I've also spoken to other sports about this, like the women's soccer and other, big women's ball sports, not having the same sort of broadcast technology and cameras. So they, the angles will be low or too far away, and it makes it look like the skill of the athletes is less.
Interesting.
In cycling we see it a lot, particularly if there's no helicopter footage and they're relying just on moto cameras, and particularly not, they might just have two for a race, so you'll have one camera that just sits at the back of the peloton and films all the riders that are getting dropped from the race.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And the other at the front that and it just doesn't do the racing any justice at all.
Well, it doesn't tell the story, for sure.
It doesn't tell the story. And then as soon as there's as soon as the race sort of breaks apart and there's, multiple groups on the road, and it chooses just to focus in on like the wrong part of the race, like complete lack of understanding of what should be shown at this point, then of course the viewers are going to look at it and be like, this is not good racing.
Right.
But yeah, it's totally not because the racing is bad, it's just how it's being portrayed.
And I even think, too, of having one commentator versus two commentators or some kind of team. It's totally a different experience when some person is, it's just a tough ask to have one person comment on the race.
Oh, when they have just the single commentator, I always feel so sorry for the commentator. I do a bit of commentary myself for the Australian broadcaster, and you rely a lot on being able to like bounce off the other commentators to bring colour, and usually you'd have an anchor and then like an expert, someone that's like more got a history in cycling, so that it's like almost a conversation about what's happening and delivering insights all the time. But if it's just one person, then it's so difficult and not interesting for the viewer at all.
Right. Well, you mentioned that more money is coming into the sport and higher salaries and all that. What negatives or what issues that maybe we haven't thought of are cropping up because there is more money in the sport?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think always when there's like rapid growth, it means that, like the resourcing and the teams are sort of expanding at a pace that's hard to keep up with at a human level. So we're seeing teams' budgets increase a lot, like riders getting paid more, the market is really increasing, but a lot of the people in the sport are still the same as it was 10 years ago. So I think like that's and they don't necessarily know how to manage everything at the professional level that's being asked of them. So I think that's a really interesting challenge. Not that they shouldn't be there, but I think there needs to be a lot more like human resource training, because a lot of the roles, like, you don't need to be qualified in any capacity. It's just like whether you've been in the sport for a long time or not, whether you get a job. And also I think a little bit similar to the broadcast issue, the women's peloton have traditionally had like the rejects from men's cycling.
I agree with you.
Either some like really weird, I don't know, people that are just enjoy like the power of being a big dog in women's sport, or they haven't quite made it on the men's side, and it's like, well, I'll take a job in women's cycling because I want to be in cycling, but I'd prefer to be with the men.
Ugh,
so
it's depressing.
Yeah, it's not all like this. Like,
no,
don't
I know,
get me
I
wrong.
know, I know.
I've worked with some really great people in the women's side of cycling, but yeah, there is this overarching sort of attitude, and it's not great for the quality of personnel in general that you see coming into our side of the sport.
Yeah,
which is a pity.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about details and data, but, more personally, what do you see as the general, I don't know what to call it, but the general vibe of women's cycling right now? I mean, where are we at? Yeah,
it is, I think it's hard. Like, women's cycling exists inside cycling as a whole, and it is like a bit of a, I don't know, tension point, I think, for the sport sport and the industry, like there's a lot of things that are trying to change, but cycling's really like rooted in traditionalism. So most people are just trying to like hold it back. And yeah, I think the women's side is like really existing in that context and trying to push against this sort of male dominated old school mentality of what sport should be and what an athlete should look like, and traditional roles and all sorts of stuff. So I think it's interesting, but the rise of women's sport in general is like helping women's cycling, and that like overall acceptance of women being able to make a career out of it now is a really positive influence. So I think it will continue to, grow. But I'm a little bit concerned about the sport as a whole, just like where it can go from here, because it's like clinging so hard to its past. Just like the model, I spoke about like how we rely completely on sponsorship. Basically, there's no revenue sharing in broadcast or like even image rights. Is just like other sports really take that on, and athletes get income from it and stuff, and it's really like, I don't know, stuck, and the race calendar's all over the place. There's no like league. So I think all that's difficult, and there's been attempts to, to try and, I think there's been like this One Cycling, which is a similar model to, I think, Live Golf has been suggested, and like some teams want to go over and follow this different complete model and step away from the traditionalism. So yeah, it's hard to predict the future, to be honest. There's a lot going on.
Is TCA involved in that kind of discussion?
No, we're not. We try and it's really the teams that are involved in that, and it's all quite confidential about what the terms of the new model are. So yeah,
that's interesting.
Sort of just wait and try and pick up on hints and see, but I mean, where the money is coming from is questionable, but I think the concept of disrupting the historical way things have been done is interesting. Yeah. So
at the very least, it starts the conversation. Yeah. Ask questions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Given that you're not going to be involved in that, what is your focus going to be for the upcoming year? You personally, I guess, in TCA.
Yeah. We're really focused on, I think, trying to work out solutions for elevating the continental level and sort of putting in place minimum standards there. It's really difficult, but yeah, we try and keep pushing, and I think just as long as you keep speaking up about it, it keeps it front of mind for people. Also, just like a lot of health related, like female health related issues, relative energy deficiency in sport has been a hot topic over the last couple of months in cycling in particular, and that's something that we're passionate about and really want to continue educating. I think the riders are fairly well educated in general about it, but a lot of teams and medical staff are not. It's crazy.
Really?
There's just a lot of old school
Wow.
medical opinions in cycling. Like, I think doctors that have been around for
Too long.
and probably haven't kept up to date with modern medicine. So that's definitely something that we're trying to like keep pushing for. Just like best practice across the whole sport in terms of fueling and like looking after a female body, because it's we're less tolerant than male bodies.
Yep.
So I think that's like our current passion at the moment. And for me, I think I'm just, in terms of the Cyclists Alliance, just always trying to push forward and play my role. It's difficult. I'm in Australia and not always in the action over in Europe. So just keeping tabs on things and staying involved as much as I can.
Well, thank you. Did you want to wrap up in any way, that something that we missed?
No, I think we've covered a lot, really.
We have, yes.
Yeah. Thanks for the good questions and thanks for being interested in the Cyclist Alliance and what we're doing and the state of women's cycling at the moment. It's in some ways a niche sport. Not, in Europe it's pretty big, but not all over the world. So we appreciate any visibility that we get. So thank you.
Well, I think what you guys do has always been so terrific, and this conversation has been fantastic and also fascinating. There's so much stuff I didn't know. So, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you to all the folks at the Cyclists Alliance. It is perfect that we got to get started again after our summer break with such a wonderful organization, an organization that has been working for many years to improve sport for women. Obviously, TCA focused on cyclists and not all sport, but what they do impacts other sports, and the reverse is true as well. Advancements for women in other sports has helped and influenced what goes on in cycling. So thank you again to Grace for being on Hear Her Sports podcast, and thank you to TCA for everything that you do and have done. Check out Grace's show notes page for links to other TCA people who have been on the show, including Iris Slappendel, co-founder and longtime executive director of TCA, and time trial superstar Haley Simmons. We took a longer late summer break this year. I've had other things on my mind that I've had to focus on. I appreciate so much that you are back again listening. The biggest reaction that I had talking to Grace a couple weeks ago and then editing this episode was, this is why I keep working on the show. This conversation was amazing. Grace is amazing. And all of my guests are amazing. It is always an honor to talk to my guests. They are community, inspiration, and every time make me smile. I hope that it is the same for you when you listen. If you are new to Hear Her Sports, find all of the episodes at hearhersports.com. To find some of my favorite episodes, look through the Favorites Spotify playlist, which you can find in the Playlist tab at hearhersports.com. Other playlists that you can find in that tab include cycling, nutrition, and aging well. To make a donation to support this show directly, go to the Donate and Support tabs. Well, that's it for now. I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.